Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Hello and welcome to today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. It has been a minute, and I hope you have been well. But my guess is you might have had COVID like I did back in early June. Seems like everyone I know is getting COVID around then. I had what I would consider a fairly moderate case. I had 3 days of fever and chills, brain fog, and weird kidney pain. Also, deep fatigue. And even after I felt like I'd recovered, I had this experience of feeling like I would just hit an energetic wall, that I had just come up to the limit of my available energy. And I've got to say, I did a really good job listening to that and respecting it. I feel like I've spent most of my life noticing that wall and then blowing right past it in service of getting more done. And that is a pattern that, as longtime listeners of this show will recall, it has extracted a steep cost to my health. And really, it's only been in the past few years that I have been serious about weaning myself of my yang addiction and shedding that over-identification with doing at the expense of being that causes us to to keep going after our bodies say stop. But I had the extra motivation of not wanting to court long COVID by dipping into my reserves. So I was really diligent about listening. I pretty much cut everything I could that was extraneous from my schedule, including fun stuff like getting together with friends and staying up past 9 p.m. I was really good about taking my herbs to be a less hospitable host, helped the brain fog tremendously. And I also practiced some Qigong breathing that involves breathing in through the nose and then humming on the exhalation, because humming can lead to a 15 to 20-fold increase in nitric oxide levels, which help kill off pathogenic fungus, bacteria, viruses, etc., and also opens up the airways to help the lungs. So humming, fantastic way to boost the immune system and build energy. Now that I feel like I'm back to normal, I have been enjoying every possible minute outside hiking and spending time with friends out here in Oregon. We get about 10 weeks of sun, and I am not about to miss them. So that is another reason for my extended absence from the podcast. So I'm thinking that the bar has been pretty high as to what rises to the level of like worth coming inside and having a conversation. And the things that I'm most interested in talking about with you and with my guests are things rooted in Chinese medicine that help you take the best care of yourself. So since I was drawn back to my Qigong practice during COVID, I figured now would be a good time to revisit the topic on the show. We have, of course, talked about Qigong in the past. I did an episode with Lee Holden. That was episode 129. I did a solo show, episode 37, on playing with the life force, which is essentially Qi. You can feel free to go back and listen to those archived episodes. But if you're just tuning in and you've never heard of Qigong, it's essentially the exercise branch of Chinese medicine. So it literally translates as energy exercise or energy skill. It combines breath, movement, and awareness or mental intention, and essentially looks like flowing movements. If you're watching someone do Qigong, you're watching them do Tai Chi, which is a subset of Qigong. But essentially, it's like very flowy, watery, circular movements. Sometimes not moving at all, but just using the breath and moving energy around your body with your intention. Different movements are like medicine for different parts of the body, and it's a deceptively powerful self-healing tool. My conversation today is with Dr. Juli Kramer, and we're going to be touching on how Qigong can help with digestion, anxiety, sleep, balance, and helping us maintain our independence throughout our lives. Dr. Juli Kramer is a certified Qigong, meditation, and traditional Chinese medicine beauty secrets instructor. She holds a diploma in Chinese Medicine Nutritional Therapy and multiple certificates in Chinese medicine. She also has a YouTube channel with a ton of free resources on Qigong. Dr. Juli Kramer, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Hi, Brody. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here with you.
I am just delighted, especially we haven't met before, but in just as we were as we're chatting before the show, that you and I can tell are on the same page in so many ways in terms of how powerful sort of power in disguise qigong can be. And I'd love for you to first of all just share how you went from being a hardcore athletic marathon triathlon person to banging the drum around qigong.
Yeah, it's such a great journey. And I'm sure you and so many of your listeners are here because of their journeys. And mine started back about 20 years ago. I had a skiing injury and I had to have surgery and couldn't run. And so at that time, I was introduced to yoga because it was much more prevalent in the West where I live here in Colorado. And my mind was just kind of open to, wow, I thought I was strong, but I'm really not strong. Like looking at some of the balancing postures, the breathing, all of this. And I noticed when I finally healed and, oh my gosh, I can finally run again right after a year. It took me a year to really be able to run without pain. I went on to do more marathons and some triathlons. It was always in the back of my brain. And I kept doing this yoga and being like, okay, something's here. I feel better. I noticed this energy shift. Well, when I was living in China about 6 years ago, I just was going, you walk through where you live. I see the parks and I would notice what people were doing. And I had seen it since a little girl growing up, the pictures of the old people in China exercising Tai Chi. And I had experienced Tai Chi as well, Tai Chi. And something also resonated. I was like, ooh, I need to pay attention. So, because I was living there and I could see it, I was really curious. And so I just started going, and they thought, oh, here's this crazy person from the West doing Qigong with us. And I just completely shifted. My energy shifted. My breathing was better. My strength was better. My mood was better. And all of this really just came about to help me just embrace this mode of exercise. I do want to add one more quick thing. I did discover and Chinese medicine as my primary healthcare about 18 years ago. So I was familiar with the ideas of Chinese medicine. I'd been studying, taking courses. So I had the medicine part, but I didn't have the application of it in my own day-to-day healthcare. So those two things coming together while living in China were a complete shift for me.
Oh, I can just imagine that. Like that, it is one thing to understand yin and yang as a theory, or understand, okay, everything is energy, but to actually be able to experience yourself as an energy being and start playing with your energy body is a very different thing.
Definitely, definitely. And one of the criteria for me, because I still had this mindset of what exercise should do for my body, of I should build my muscles, I should strengthen my bones, I should work on my cardio. I began exploring more about, well, what does Qigong do? Why is it different from the West? Why are my muscles still incredibly strong, but I'm moving very gently? Why is my balance incredibly, or why am I incredibly balanced, I guess? And I'm not doing this like weightlifting or running or hardcore kind of Western style of exercise. And so I did a lot of research, a lot of study. I got my certification. And some of this was just kind of revealed in this very gentle way of movement actually helps us do what we're trying to do better. And that's some of what we can maybe talk about, for today. But I just want to pause and see if you have kind of any questions before that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just continuing in this vein, I think that a lot of people very much find themselves in the mindset that, like, if you're not maxing out your intensity in a workout, you're not doing enough. And that's a mindset that is, I think it's part of our general cultural yang addiction around doing more, doing it faster. And really that sort of that the idea that exercise is this pumping iron and running long distances, or like how many calories can you burn in the shortest amount of time, and so it can be kind of punishing and kind of hard on the body. This is again not to diminish, like I mean, there's plenty of people who absolutely love running long distances and doing hard workouts, and I am one of those people. I'm not a runner, but I do love intensity, and I do love feeling strong, and I do lift weights as well as do my yoga and qigong and more like that kind of thing. But there is, I think, a definite difference in what we perceive as what counts as exercise in the West versus what counts as exercise specifically in the Chinese medicine tradition, where qigong, where exercise means really breathing and moving in these much more gentle ways. So I'm curious, like, I'd love for you to convince people that gentle movements can in fact build strength.
Okay, that's great. So I guess I want to touch on a couple things. A word that you mentioned at the very beginning was this idea of independence, right? Having a long life where you're strong and capable and independent. And so we'll talk about how the Qigong views strength. In this yang Western model, things wear out. You can't help but reading the news, hearing friends say, oh, I had a knee replacement. I had a hip replacement. Oh, my back, I have back surgery. There is a price that's paid for this very yang. I love that expression, this very yang way of exercising, because our bodies don't need it and are punishing. Our minds might need it. It might bring us joy. If running brings you joy and you're happy, you should run. If lifting brings you joy, if this like biking and hard work bring you joy, you should do it. And at the same time, you should be careful. Are you going to wear out your body? And so let's talk about the strength, and then we can talk later about that independence that it provides. When you're in Qigong, here's a quick thing your listeners can do. In Qigong, you will stand, and you will stand in kind of your legs are about hip width apart, knees slightly bent, pelvis tucked. And you can stand in that position, moving your upper body, doing twisting and all sorts of motions for a good half hour. And how many of your listeners can truly stand, right? And just feel that balance and stability, the strength of the body. The other example is you might stand in yoga, it's called horse riding stance. In Qigong, it's called sitting astride. And that's where your legs are about 2 times shoulder width apart. Knees are bent, your hips are lowered down, and the spine is upright and long. You will be in that position sometimes, very kind of brief moments, but other times you could be in there for 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the breathing or the movement you're doing. And so the strength is coming from this stability and holding, right? It's this holding that lets the muscles unfold, that lets the tendons move the blood and energy instead of inhibiting the flow. And that's where all illness and injury comes from stagnation. And a lot of that Western weightlifting, running, all of that can create stagnation in the body because of injury, tearing of the muscles, tearing at the mitochondrial level. And Qigong doesn't do that. It allows this unfolding and opening through the strength of the holding.
Yeah, some of those postures, like standing in horse stance for a really long time, is really difficult. That kind of isometric rate of exercise, obviously something that people can start where they are and build up to it, but it absolutely is. It can be challenging and strength building, but also in a way where like the focus is about how supple and how relaxed can we be while in these postures. So, which is an interesting question, right? Or a different place to put our focus. And that the idea that, to go back to what you were saying about stagnation being the cause of disease and injury, it's that, yeah, if you can imagine, like if we're using our muscles, every time we're using a muscle, we are contracting it. It is getting shorter and it tightens. And if we're doing a lot of strength building and contracting and tightening without a corresponding amount of lengthening and opening so that we can get the good, fresh chi and blood in through that area and get the metabolic waste out of that area, it's going to be a problem. And so, a lot of times it's like there's a token amount of stretching thrown in at the end of an exercise class, or people, spend a few minutes with a foam roller, like usually after they have an injury or something like that. And it's just kind of, it's not, in my opinion, quite enough to balance a lot of the fairly harsh ways we can treat our bodies during exercise.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And again, it's this thinking about what matters, what should our bodies be doing. And people, it's no one's fault. Like in the West, we hear in the media, in the press all the time, your cardio has to be in the zone, you have to do this weight bearing. I mean, we just don't have a complete picture of our body. And that's where Qigong can really help us. And one of the things I want to talk about is this idea of what are we strengthening? We talked about how to strengthen, how Qigong does that. And I want to invite your listeners to think about, are you strengthening your internal organs? Are you even aware of your internal organs? And if that's kind of okay, I'd love to really maybe unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, please do. I'm sure a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads wondering, what does she even mean, strengthen your internal
I
organs?
know,
I didn't
right?
know that was a thing. I thought that happened with vitamins and nutrition. Yeah.
Exactly. And movement is movement is essential for strengthening those. And I'm going to give a story. The masters that came over from China in the early 1900s would look at these Western forms of exercise and they would kind of scratch their heads and they're like, well, where's your twisting? Where's your bending? Where's your balance? Where's this massage? They just didn't understand our exercise, just like we might be perplexed at, well, what's the benefit of this other? And they understood that twisting, bending, folding, kind of like a side bend, a forward fold, all of these things strengthen your internal organs, because what it does when you move the body, and your spine, let's not forget about the spine and the heart and the lungs, all of this, because when you move your body in those ways, you are clearing stagnation. You are letting the heart pump as it should. You're letting the spleen and stomach and pancreas digest food as they should. You're making sure there's not these blockages, like little dams. Have you ever seen a river and it's all gunked up with algae because it's not flowing, it's not fresh, right? Just that kind of idea. And so the twisting, bending, folding lets these organs just thrive, which is why we have strong muscles in Qigong also, because we have better blood flow. We have better flow of energy to go to all of the extremities of our body. We don't have joint pain. In fact, Qigong is one of the best things people can do for their fascia, for the tendons, the joints, just to heal at that deep, deep internal level through the gentle movements and through this enhancing and strengthening of your internal organs.
You bring up such a good point that just that the ways that we move need to be varied, right? And that twisting and bending, what basically you're contracting your abdomen, and in doing so, you're bringing blood flow to the area. Like really, when we're talking about directing the flow of energy in the body, it can sound really mystical, but really, like, how do you do that? Well, you can do it with a needle. You can do it with your hands through self-massage. You can do it with your mind, intending these areas, turning on the same neural pathways. But you can also do it with movement that you can feel, and that if you want to bring energy to your stomach, you can breathe into your stomach. You can do areas that open that air, or that contract and then open that area of your body. And it's like, it's not rocket science. It's not complicated. And like, one of the super simplest ways I think that we can prevent injury and help ourselves is to do circles, right? Like take every part of your body in a circle, your head, your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders, and your spine, not necessarily each vertebrae in a circle, but your spine in waves and undulations, and your hips in circles. And it just that, I mean, spending a few minutes just opening things up, taking your body through its range of motion, brings qi and blood flow to that area and increases your proprioception of that area if you bring your mind to it at the same time and you think of yourself not just as your meat sack, but as this energy body around us, our bioelectrical field, and including that in what it is that we are bringing our attention towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And, attention just kind of brings up another benefit of Qigong, because in Qigong, we always have a focus. Does that make sense? Like we're
Like a
focused.
drishti in yoga, right? This
Yeah,
idea
it's like
that
the disti. Yeah. So yeah. So for your listeners, and so for example, we'll have a posture, for example, that is to focus on the heart, and you'll be moving the body in a way, and you bring your attention to the heart energy, the heart in the actual physical heart, the sac around the heart, the pericardium, and then that extends out into the arms. And so as you move your arms and you move your body, what your mind is not doing, it's not worrying about the past. It's not worrying about the future. It's not worrying at all. It's focusing on the present. And that focus of mind, one of the things that gives a lot of problems for people for their digestion, anxiety, sleep, all of these issues, it's called monkey mind.
oh
And
yeah.
the monkey mind, imagine monkeys, just bouncing around here to there, all over the tree. They're never just present. And so what these exercises do is they also strengthen your ability to think in a much more mature way. We're not trained to think maturely, right? We're just trained to be pulled in every direction, to have this monkey mind, just because of our society in which we live. That's just the reality of society in the West. And so Qigong lets us come back. And what's beautiful is, for example, you have your athletes that, let's say they're going to continue doing these very rigorous Western forms of exercise, which is great until about 48 to 50 years of age. And then you kind of need to think about that independence. And we can talk about that in a bit. But when they can focus their minds, strengthen their internal organs so they get a better recovery from the harder workouts they're doing, and they also have increased flexibility and reduced joint pain and stiffness, they're going to find a benefit emotionally and physically. So as athletes, they're going to thrive even better.
To quote from one of the first articles I ever shared with the Huffington Post, Qigong is like yoga's less popular, less sexy cousin. It's a body-mind exercise or moving meditation that you deepen into with every flowing movement. I created a class rooted in one of the oldest traditional Qigong forms that you can do in 20 minutes a day, anywhere, anytime, with no stretchy pants required. I call it 12 Treasures Qigong, and it's like a moving multivitamin for every system of your body. You get a downloadable video so you can practice with me in my backyard, or you can listen to the audio track along with a cheat sheet of PDFs to help you really get into your body. To thank you for being an amazing podcast listener, use the code FRIENDOFTHEPOD for 20% off at checkout. A lifelong practice for less than what you'd spend on just one acupuncture treatment or massage. Head to the classes and meditations page at brodywelch.com today and use Friend of the Pod for a discount at checkout. Some really great points, that allowing your body and your breath and this larger conception of our bodies, our energy bodies, to be a focus of attention is a form of meditation. And so many people who really, I think there's so many people who meditation in a traditional sense doesn't really work for, because they don't want to just sit there, and at the same time, like that mental training of focused awareness and curiosity. I love that personally in my practice. Like, after so many years of doing forms of meditation where I'm supposed to shut out everything but the mantra, everything but the place I'm focusing on, the ability to get curious about sensation, about warmth, about tingling, about how does this feel as I breathe and move inside, as well as the space that I think of as outside, until I stop, until that sort of dissolution between inside and outside starts to happen. And it's a really cool feeling, like bringing what may start as like an intention or imagining energy moving in certain ways with practice can very quickly become something you actually feel and can experience yourself in a new way, which I think is helps us identify less with who we think we are in the end, and maybe even identifying a little bit less with our physicality and how it's supposed to look when we really get curious about how we feel.
Oh my gosh, that Brody, that is so beautifully expressed. That sense of curiosity, that sense of energy and tuning into who you are, awareness, because I think we shut that side down so much. And qigong really, and you know this in Chinese medicine, it emphasizes our spiritual, and it doesn't necessarily mean religious, right? Like it's just this awareness that there's so much we just don't know. And that's where that curiosity comes in, right? Like, what do I feel? Who am I? Where am I? And this movement and meditation combined with each other, that's just so beautiful. I want to expand that view though. So as you're
Yeah,
feeling
please.
the tingling, the energy, as you become more sensitive, some of my students, they're like, I can't feel anything. And I just assure them you're moving. It's okay. It's happening because it is. One of the cool things of curiosity is getting this movement out into nature, giving this time to connect to energy outside of you, whether you go outside for a walk or you bring your qigong practice outside, or you compare running on a treadmill on a rainy day inside to, running outside. And just this idea of energy within you, as you said, but also without you, drawing energy in. The Qigong masters talk all the time about these energetic beings that we are, this energetic sphere starting at conception. And so, this idea that when you go by a tree, you can actually draw energy in from a tree, or energy in from the desert, energy from water. And there's actual medical Qigong practices to help people overcome cancers and illnesses by drawing on nature to enhance that. So being curious about, what do I feel when I bring my practice outside?
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's a great way when you are outside of being able to relate to the environment in a different way. And yeah, and basically just to literally connect to your environment through your intention and your breath, because yeah, we are obviously exchanging molecules with everyone around us and everything around us all the time.
Yeah. And then I don't know why, just I was thinking of trees, and I was thinking of the limbs and the delicate leaves, and that brought me back to something very different in Chinese medicine qigong practice, is that we focus on every single ligament, digit, part of the body, not just our gross motor muscles. So most Western forms of exercise, you're focusing on that gross motor, your thighs, your glutes, your, biceps, triceps, abdominal, internal, kind of stabilize your core, all of that. And in Qigong, you're expanding that to actually look all the way to your fingertips, to your toes, your heels, your ankles. You talked about circles earlier, doing knee circles, hip circles, neck circles, turning, rotating. We actually move our eyes to work our eye muscles. And so this these teeny tiny parts of you can make you sick if there's stagnation, even in these far small removed parts of your body. So having a form of exercise that lets you get movement everywhere is really powerful.
And indeed, when we can get into the tinier muscles, the subtler muscles, that requires slowing down. Like
Yes.
you can't possibly be attuned to that kind of subtlety when you're moving quickly. And so it just that so and it's precisely those little the tinier, more fine tuning muscles that we need in order to physically stay balanced, right? Fall prevention, things like that. That it's the smaller muscles in the feet and ankles. It's it's even the smaller muscles of the hips that help us stabilize. And so being able to get curious and aware of and keep these places functioning can have a lot of benefit.
Yeah. And that's that independence again, right? So many
Exactly.
people, it's the falls. I'm sure you see so much in your practice of recovery from injury from a fall, or,
Yep.
you know,
Can really shake people's confidence, and it can obviously keep people from doing what they know they need to do to take care of themselves. And of course, with older people, if osteoporosis is a concern, it's like if you fall and break something, that's essentially, it really can be the beginning of the end in terms of mortality. It's definitely something that most people want to avoid if they can.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm thinking of a particular Qigong sequence. There's a set of 3 series called Liang Gong Ba Fa, and it's 18 essential daily movements. And in each one, there are these balancing postures. And my husband, he's very much in the Western model. I'm
Mhm.
trying to drag him, slowly into this. And we'll sometimes take a break when we're watching TV, and I'm like, okay, let's do this balancing pose. Let's do walking on the mountain. And those are really hard for him. It's so interesting that, he, bikes for hundreds of miles. He works out with a trainer at his place of work a couple days a week. And he literally is struggling just to do the simple heel toe stepping, lifting, moving through, to work, like you said, on those little muscles, those slow muscles that will keep him independent and safe throughout life.
Yeah, and it's a great way of balancing that intense work that he is doing too. I
Ah,
mean, I think it's I think it's great to have a yin and a yang practice, and
yes.
that's yin and yang support one another and transform into one another. And when we're only just doing one, is when things by definition go out of balance. I'm curious. Back to we were talking earlier about using how qigong itself is this moving meditation, and it can help us calm our minds and train our minds and help us like not be victims of sort of believing everything we think and all that. If we could take that a step further, I'm curious. I know there's a lot of people who have that, especially that active mind at night, or if they wake up in the middle of the night, or maybe before bed. I'm wondering if there's a practice that you could recommend that you could walk us through for helping people either relax their mind or get out of an anxious space so that we can go to sleep, relax, or just
Oh,
focus.
definitely. So the first thing, this is a kind of a qigong tuina massage practice, but I really recommend it, is to either as you're watching TV or settling down for the night, do a head massage. So you bring your fingers to the front of your scalp. And we do this in the Qigong practice. We have lots of massage sequences that we do, especially in our 18 essential daily movements. And so you'll massage doing small circles, moving from the hairline, massaging all the way back to where the skull meets the neck. And then you'll move your fingers. So you'll start at center, and then you'll move your fingers a little bit out till you're over your ears. And you just do that massage for like 5 to 10 minutes. That just brings the energy, loosens that tension in the head. And you're focusing, also, you're moving the heart meridian points in the hands and the arms. So you're letting you're clearing stagnation within those, the head and within the arms. So that's the first thing that I would recommend.
5 minute head massage sounds like a great nighttime ritual. Like I think while this podcast is not meant to be medical advice, that's one of those like I don't see any harm in everyone giving that a try.
Good, good. And that alone will, as you hear, like if you massage, you'll hear your hair and you focus on the sound. And so that's one of the Qigong things that I would recommend. The
Oh,
main,
and to,
yeah,
to expand on that too, just
yeah.
from a Chinese medicine standpoint, there are areas of the body that will tend to, like things like the hands, the feet, the ears, and the scalp are these microsystems whereby we can affect the whole body in one place. And these tend to be places where we have a lot of nerves, a lot of sort of sensation concentration. And so the scalp is a way of kind of giving a shadow massage to your whole body, in addition to the fact that we carry a lot of tension in our heads, right? We're
Yes.
literally in our heads a lot. So I love that. And that's in the Qigong teacher trainings that I've done, starting with self massage was especially of the head and the sensory organs, was absolutely a place that we would often start. So I think that's a great recommendation.
Good. I'm glad. And it's easy, right? Everyone, if you're chair bound or bed bound, you can do this. If you don't have the flexibility in your shoulders, though, which some people don't, I recommend doing some stroking of the arms. You can start up at the inside of your shoulder and just stroke down, turn your palm up and stroke down the inside of your arms if it's hard for you to lift your hands up to your head. And this opens the channels of the heart, the pericardium. You can even stroke a little bit on the lung side just to get the air breathing. And that will really also help just clear the energy, open because the heart is, when we have too much heart fire, is when we can't sleep at night. And so we want to release that heart fire. And I know that might not be a comfortable term. So let me, when you kind of have your brain running at night, that's the Chinese term for it would be heart fire. And so we just want to massage down, just stroke down though, because that's how the channel goes. So you pick the hand up, bring it back to the shoulder, stroke, let it fall off the fingers, and just do that just as long, half a minute or even less if you need, just kind of a nice gentle stroking. That's also beautiful for people that have that shoulder pain and can't lift the hands up.
Great tip. Just point of clarification
Okay, yeah.
from a Chinese medicine standpoint, heart fire can be one cause of insomnia. There are tons of others. That's going to be less effective if your insomnia is caused by like blood deficiency, for example. But a lot of times it's one of those like, give it a try and see if it helps you. Because a lot of times like the nighttime is the yin of our day, right? If the day is yang, the night is yin. It's when we're supposed to be restful. We're supposed to get that sort of rejuvenating, nourishing, and be in a space of rest and repair. And so we do need to settle the yang. And when yang is in excess, it is difficult for the yin to contain it. And so we have difficulty transitioning into sleep. So anyway, just wanting to throw that in, that like, depending on what kind of insomnia you have, that there may be other forms of qigong or other forms of self massage that are more beneficial to you. Nonetheless, clearing heart fire, not a bad idea for anybody. Yeah, at all.
Totally true. Sorry, I was just trying to think of like qigong things that would be
Oh,
helpful.
no, totally. But I think it's probably useful to remind everyone that it's like Chinese medicine is never a one size fits all in terms of causality. And yet at the same time, there's still universal principles of the nervous system that we absolutely are going to be working with, that are going to be true for all humans and probably all mammals from that perspective.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And then there's stuff, obviously that I would have to demonstrate, that you would have to see, but just there's a box breath is what we call it. And so you would imagine just kind of a box shape, and you would take a nice deep inhale through your nose, and up to 7 counts, if at least 4, if you're able. I know a lot of people, their lung capacity, it's hard for them to inhale very long. Then you would hold it for 7. You would exhale for 7, and then you would pause for 7. And so imagine working around a box and just focusing on this breath where you inhale, hold, exhale, pause, is really calming. And just, it's great to do even if it's not before bed. It's just something to do through the day to calm your mind. It gives you a point of focus, and it increases lung capacity, which is so important. We want to, I'm a skier. And when I was running marathons, I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I get so winded when I'm doing bump skiing? And when I started doing Qigong, I was like, oh my gosh, I have never had this so easy. My lung capacity was is so vast that I could do things I was never able to do before. It was remarkable.
I love that. You're giving people a practical sense of like, yeah, why would I want to increase my breath capacity? Like, other than bragging rights, it's like, oh, well, because it actually will increase your athletic performance. Also, when we can strengthen our diaphragms and be able to breathe deeper and longer and slower, we also increase our carbon dioxide tolerance, and carbon dioxide makes us calm. So it's our really, as we expand our capacity to breathe deeply into the belly, we increase our ability to relax and to maintain a relaxed state. It's like when people are hyperventilating, we give them a paper bag to breathe into so that they recirculate their carbon dioxide, is because that is the function of this gas. And if we're chest breathing because we're stressed all the time and our breath rises and our diaphragm tightens, we lose that ability to access calm. So it's just yeah, I think that what those breath retention on the inhale and the exhale, as you described with box
Yeah.
breathing, there is a very real reason that that works.
Awesome. And I didn't know that. That's perfect. I love that. That's so, so cool.
I, as our time is running short here, I'd love for you to just recap some of the things that Qigong can be good for in general, in case people need any more motivation other than bringing qi and blood to their digestion, to be able to calm down, to be able to sleep at night, to be able to strengthen their internal organs, to be able to train their minds. What else? And maybe especially if you can point us towards the things that have been. It's been a while. I gave a talk on this for a gerontology conference a while ago and listed all of the medical benefits of qigong. But I'd love for you to just list off some of the things we haven't talked about.
Definitely. So, some of the things that I think are really helpful are this fascia, thinking about the connecting points in the bone, that skeletal health. You mentioned osteoporosis, right? And so that's something that's incredible. Qigong, the research is actually pretty strong on bone strength and the effect of Qigong. You mentioned earlier COVID. A study was done for in China recently, up in Beijing. It was done with college students, but I think the results can transfer. Anxiety. When people had anxiety about COVID, anxiety about the changes in their life, recovery from COVID, all of that. Qigong, in particular, they tested Baduan Jin, which are the 8 pieces of silk brocade, reduced the anxiety of a specific cause. So like we have this generalized anxiety sometimes, but if you have a specific worry, that these Qigong movements have been demonstrated through the research to clear that. Yeah. And I think the list you pretty you got most of it, but the independence I think comes from two things. And I just want to leave with this emotional strength. We in the West are afraid of our emotions. We get afraid of depression, anxiety, fear, all of this. And what Qigong helps us do is to teach us that all of these are lessons that are transient. It lets us take that emotion, feel it, experience it, acknowledge the lessons we need to learn from it, and then let that go into the earth to be recycled. The earth energy is very powerful. So anything you throw at it, it's not going to be too strong. So it lets you go. And then when you feel it again, you have the power through your breath and movement to come back to center. You don't need to have this fear of your emotions. They're healing for you. They're healthy when they don't take control. And what Qigong lets you do is you are the one to control it. You learn the emotion's not in control, you are. And I think that's the one that we didn't talk about that I'd like to share, that the emotions aren't good or bad. They're there and we learn from them and can let them go through these practices.
Emotions are qi. Right. And
Yeah.
qi needs to flow, and qigong can be a great way of specifically allowing qigong to flow. There also has been some research that shows that qigong can reduce depression in
Yes.
addition to anxiety. And just to throw in a few more little benefits potentially, can lessen chronic fatigue, can boost immune function, and in terms of self-efficacy in older adults, the ability to do more on your own, in addition to, yeah, all the other things we've talked about. So hopefully, if people are inspired to learn more, where would you have them go first to learn more about what you do?
Yeah, I would definitely have them visit me at Radiant Shanti. And you'll have the link associated with the podcast. And that's just an opportunity for you to learn more about Qigong. I'm also on Insight Timer. It's a free app where people can come. I do classes, free classes twice a week.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know you were on Insight Timer.
Yeah,
That's
I'm on Insight
fantastic.
Timer. Yeah. And I do a lot. I know a lot of the listeners are younger, but any older listeners or people, even younger people recovering from surgery or injury, I do a chair class every week. So I have standing practice and chair practice because movement is so essential for everyone. It doesn't, whatever you can do, Qigong takes you where you are and lets you heal from that point. So I invite, come find me on Insight Timer. That would be great.
Awesome. I'll have those links in the show notes. And Juli Kramer, thank you so much for having this conversation with me and hopefully educating people about this powerful way that we can take care of ourselves.
Thank you so much for having me, Brody. It was really lovely to speak with you.
Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.